We can now explore the opposing sides in the War for American Independence. It appeared as if the colonists had no chance to win this war. First, they were hopelessly outnumbered by about 7.5 million to 2.5 million, many of whom were enslaved. The British also had the world's largest navy and possibly the strongest army. They even had enough resources to hire foreign troops, which they did. There were also large numbers of colonists opposed to the independence movement. These loyalists were estimated to make up as much as 20% of the white population of the colonies. Their support was strongest in New York and New Jersey. On the side, we see an image of England's King George III. Americans were helped by strong and committed leadership. Virginia's George Washington was named the head of the Continental Army. He became a true hero of the Revolution. Benjamin Franklin worked as a diplomat, attempting to secure foreign aid. While the Americans didn't have a large cadre of well-trained soldiers, they were fighting for a noble cause, the independence of their country. However, the colonists were plagued by a lack of unity, economic difficulties, and they always seemed to be short on supplies. This slide shows Washington at his winter quarters at Valley Forge. Washington and his men suffered from inadequate food, supplies, firewood, and shelter in their winter encampment. Soldiers often walked barefoot and wore ragged clothing. The colonists were helped by the fact that they were primarily fighting a defensive war. While there were loyalists in the colonies, there was also a vocal minority in England and Parliament in support of their cause. If they could only extend the fighting until the British public lost patience in the fighting, they would improve their odds of victory. There were several important battles which took place during the war. We'll now explore a few of those. Early fighting in the North focused on New York. By the end of 1776, Washington was forced to retreat following the capture or death of about a quarter of his soldiers. However, Washington then surprised a group of Hessian forces in Trenton by mobilizing his troops on Christmas night and attacking. This was followed by a victory at Princeton in early January 1777. Here we see a map of the major fighting which took place in the North. The purple arrow points to the locations of Washington's victories in Trenton and Princeton. A crucial strategic victory was won in the fall of 1777 when nearly 6,000 British troops surrendered at Saratoga. This was important because soon thereafter France formally recognized the United States.
The arrow here points to Saratoga. It's really difficult to overestimate the significance of this victory in the French alliance. It was important for morale, and the involvement of the French proved to be key for the Americans.
In the West, campaigns tended not to involve large troop mobilizations. Native Americans were also heavily active, often fighting for the British. Mohawk Chief Joseph Brant led many forays into both Pennsylvania and New York. The entrance of Brant into the fighting led to the collapse of the Iroquois Confederacy. Initially, the Iroquois pledged to remain neutral, but Brant fought against the colonists because he believed the British would be more likely to prevent American expansion westward. Here we see a map identifying several battles showing the war in the West. If you look at the circled area, it identifies the actions of the frontiersman George Rogers Clark. In late 1778 and early 79, he successfully attacked a series of scattered forts with a small number of men in the crucial Ohio Valley. Beginning in 1778 and 79, the British adopted a strategy to focus their efforts on the South. They succeeded with attacks in Georgia and South Carolina in those years. While these were successful, they were never able to successfully control the entire regions they occupied. General Nathaniel Greene assumed command in the South, establishing a lenient policy toward Loyalists and attempting to encourage Native Americans to remain neutral. The decisive Battle of the War took place at Yorktown. British troops, led by Cornwallis, became trapped between Washington's forces, which had traveled southward from New York City, and the French Navy in the Chesapeake. Cornwallis surrendered his entire force on October 19, 1781. Fighting continued for more than a year following the defeat, but Yorktown became important because it broke the British will to fight.
One of the keys to the American victory was the participation of the French following the diplomatic efforts led by Benjamin Franklin and others. The French held no love for the British, and while they hoped to control the newly formed United States, their navy and troops were crucial at Yorktown. This image shows General Washington and the young Frenchman Lafayette. The two developed a close relationship during the war.
Now that we've completed the primary arguments included in this lecture, we can review some of its main points. Following the defeat of the French in the French and Indian War, there was tremendous patriotism on the part of the colonists. However, the British then developed a series of policies designed in large part because of their huge debt, which strained relations with the colonies. By 1775, fighting had begun at Lexington and Concord, and the major engagements continued until the Battle of Yorktown in 1781. What you should be able to do is to determine what you believe to be the most important policies and responses by the colonists, which led to the Revolutionary War. This concludes lecture number 6. I hope you have a great day. The next few slides will offer some websites for additional information, as well as sources used for this presentation. Take care.